What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Today's video is inspired by one of the questions that came up in last week's Q&A video, where somebody asked me what the difference was for me when I was a new therapist compared to now as a at least slightly more seasoned therapist. And I really like that question, so I thought I would develop a whole video based on that concept. So today I'm going to share with you the differences that I've observed between newbie therapist Marie as a grad student, as a pre-licensed therapist, compared to now as a therapist who's been licensed for almost 10 years. I'm having a bit of fun with this week's video, so I'm going to bust out my subpar acting skills again to do some role plays as therapist and client. So thanks for humoring me with that one. The experiences I'm going to share in today's video are purely anecdotal. I'm sure a lot of folks can relate with a lot of my experiences, and there may be some things in here that you absolutely don't relate with at all. So I'm just reflecting on the differences between what I observed in myself as a new therapist versus now. Okay, without further ado, in no particular order, here are some of the differences that I've observed in myself between early career therapist Marie and now. One of the things I felt I needed to do in those early days, whether I was a grad student, working as a trainee, or even in my early licensure days working in private practice, was I felt I needed to say yes to every single new client that I was qualified to treat. Beggars can't be choosers, and so if I'm picky about who I work with, then I'm not gonna have a full caseload. Yeah, sure. I could definitely help you with that. I'm pretty sure. I think so, yes. Since then, my perspective has changed drastically. I mean, if you've followed my videos for any amount of time, you know I'm all about niching down when possible. So I now have a very specific niche, and I'm privileged enough to be able to only accept clients that fit right in that niche. Another thing that's changed over the years since I started, that's probably the most felt change as far as like my lifestyle as a professional, is when I first started out and well into my early years as a licensed therapist, I felt like I needed to over-prepare for every single session. And I would spend sometimes 30 minutes or an hour preparing for every single session just to make sure I was on my A game. Probably more than half the time, we'd end up scrapping whatever I had planned because new things pop up and we still need to utilize the same techniques that I was implementing with the clients, but we had to pivot quite a bit because life happens. I've also rehearsed these tools over and over and over again with clients so many times. I already know what the plan is for the next session by the time we're signing off from our previous session. So generally now I spend maybe just 2 or 3 minutes preparing for each session beforehand just to kind of refresh my memory of where we left off. And then as I meet with the client, I check in to see if they'd like to pick up where we left off or if there's anything new that's come up. As I was reflecting on this question of what's different now versus when I started, there's this memory that came to mind that feels kind of like a small detail, but I remember it so clearly. I was so anxious in the minutes leading up to session about whether my client was coming, whether they were there, if they were already there sitting in the waiting room. If our session's at 4, do I call it 4:02 or that? No, that's just Marie, you're being ridiculous. So do I wait till 4:05, 4:10? And then I just literally would be pacing around my office, thinking about these things, checking the clock, poking my head out in the waiting room over and over and over again until 10 minutes passed when I would call my client and then hopefully reach them to see if they were coming or if they were just late. Doesn't that just sound exhausting? I feel exhausted remembering that, and it's not even happening right now. And then now, if a client is late, I just kind of receive it. I just do something I enjoy. Maybe start a game of solitaire on my phone. Anything that feels kind of low-key and chill that it can pass, a couple of minutes of time. I kind of enjoy that time, to be honest. I also noticed a pretty significant difference in how I approached consult group or supervision in my early days compared to now. In those early days, I was terrified by the idea of revealing that maybe I made a mistake in a session, which of course I made mistakes in sessions because first of all, we all make mistakes in sessions because we're all human. And in those early days, you're just still learning. And I really hate admitting this next part, but in those consult group type settings, because I wanted to look like I knew what I was doing, I was completely the know-it-all person in those groups. If somebody's feeling stuck and they're asking a question and you genuinely know the answer to the question, or you feel pretty confident that you know the answer to the question, by all means, share your knowledge. That's the whole point. But I definitely had some sass. I had some sass about it. So now I take much more of a humble mindset when it comes to asking for help, and also when it comes to offering knowledge that I have that somebody else might be asking about. And also when it comes to consult group or supervision, I have a much clearer sense now about when it's a good idea to consult, and also what specific details about a case I need to share in order to get adequate consultation. And let's see, in 2017, she had her wisdom teeth pulled. Oh, did she have complications? No complications, just totally normal wisdom teeth pulling. Yeah. And it was in winter 2018 that she got the flu. Oh, was it one of those really bad flus? No, just totally normal flu. Just, she was fine after. Another thing that comes to mind as I recall those early days is if a client brought up something that was outside of my worldview, outside of my belief system, or just, outside of my life experiences, I felt so uncomfortable and I didn't know what to do with that discomfort. And I would respond by trying to look like everything was just fine, even though I had no idea what to do. Be cool, Marie. Look chill, like you totally know all about this. What the heck are they talking about though? And now I feel much more comfortable with experiences that to me are rather foreign, or even beliefs that I disagree with or don't understand. It just feels like a curiosity. I'll be honest, I'm not so familiar with that experience. I wonder if you'd be willing to share a little bit more about it just to kind of catch me up to speed. Another thing that I used to do in the early days is I would second guess almost everything that I did with my clients, particularly like once the session ended and I'd sit down to write my notes, I would just kind of have like a little internal crisis mode of like, do I even know how to be a therapist? And I would freak out and try to contact other folks or do some frantic Googling to see if whatever I implemented with the client was the right call. And now I feel much more comfortable after each session. I'd say what shifted is rather than second guessing what happened in a specific session or a particular intervention I did that day, I'll reflect more on all of the sessions I've had with a client as a whole, or maybe the last 5 sessions. And if it feels like we've had a few sessions in a row that just aren't quite clicking overall, then I'm definitely going to consult with folks. Another thing that's changed quite a bit for me is how I define success as a therapist. I used to define my success based on each and every single client improving. And if I ever saw anything that looked like evidence that my client had not improved to the extent that they wished by the time we came to an end of therapy, I felt like I had failed. There will always be clients who don't improve. When that happens, we definitely should reflect on that, evaluate it, consult on that, what happened in the situation that this client didn't experience improvement. But I don't necessarily think that means that we're not successful, because then all of us aren't successful. All of us have clients at least sometimes who don't improve. And kind of in a similar vein of many of the items I've named so far, back in the day, if I ever felt stuck with a particular client, I used to feel like I was a complete failure. And now, when I feel stuck with a client, I just think probably another set of eyes looking at this situation will help me know where to move next. I think we're probably seeing some themes here, but I'm just going to keep it going and listing out the things I came up with. Another thing that's changed quite a bit over the years is I used to feel like I needed to have a front of professionalism whenever meeting a new therapist. And now I just feel like I should be Marie. And similarly, I really felt like I needed to dress a certain part back in those days. I mean, I remember I wore suits to my practicum experiences with heels. And not to say that people should or should not wear suits or heels to work, but for me, that very much felt like I was putting on a suit of professionalism, quite literally, but it didn't quite feel like myself. And now I definitely think about my appearance when I show up for work. I like to look like I put some thought into the way I am looking. However, I like to present as some version of me, because hopefully showing up as Marie is going to be the most helpful way to show up for my clients. Another approach that I took in the early days is I used to be of the belief that it's almost never appropriate to self-disclose, to the point of being awkward with my clients. Well, I do have some news. Since I last saw you, I got a puppy. Do you have a dog? Is there a reason why you're asking me about my personal life? Oh, no, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have asked. I wasn't trying to pry. In situations like this, the conversation gets cut short, and whatever direction we might have been headed in therapy gets completely interrupted or derailed because I'm not willing to just, answer a simple question. I've since changed my approach, and I do like to try to find ways to lean into self-disclosure if it's apparent that it's for the client's benefit. So since this puppy has to go out like every 2 hours to pee, this feels kind of like embarrassing to say, but like I'm just so sleep deprived that I'm having trouble keeping it together. I know, it feels silly. It's just a dog, right? Oh, there's no need to be embarrassed. I have a dog too, actually. So I know it's a lot, especially in those early days. Oh, good. So you know what it's like. What kind of dog do you have? She's a golden retriever. Oh, Goldens are so cute. I know, they're the best. Okay, so you know how it goes. I was just so exhausted that I ended up getting into this fight with my husband. I was just like so out of it and irritable. When self-disclosure happens in the right moments, not only can it help our client feel more connected with us, but it can also kind of propel the conversation forward in a helpful way. Another belief I used to hold in the early days that actually took me longer than some of these other items to let go of was that having a busy caseload was a sign of success as a therapist. If your goal is to have a busy caseload, by all means, have a busy caseload. But I've since come to embrace that whatever size caseload makes sense for me in my life in a given season of life is success for me. Right now, I only see clients 1 day a week. At most, I'll see 8 clients in 1 week, and that's my full caseload. And another belief that I definitely held in my early days, even if I didn't say it explicitly, was that having the most knowledge was the most important thing when it came to being an effective therapist clinically. And since then, I've come to fully embrace that the most important thing is being present with our clients. The knowledge supports our ability to be present and care for them, but the knowledge is not the most important thing, because if we have the knowledge and we're not present, we're not going to get anywhere helpful. Well, I'm sure there's more things I could name on this list, but that felt like it was already quite a few, so I think I will leave off here. But it seems pretty clear to me as I go through this list that I was definitely anxiety prone in those early days and quite insecure. All of us can be prone to anxiety, feeling insecure, and there is something to be said about doing something over and over and over again. It just feels a little bit more comfortable over time, and that's definitely been the case for me. Well, thanks for joining me in this video, and before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes helps with all of your practice management needs, from scheduling to notes to billing, and they have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform free for all users. If you'd like to check out Therapy Notes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. We hope you found this video encouraging and validating, especially those of you in your early days. Maybe you relate with some of the things on this list, and I'd love to hear from others what sorts of things you noticed have changed about yourself throughout the span of your career, whether you're still in your earlier days or if you've been doing this for decades. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.